So imagine that with our shiny new telescopes, we discover a planet with alien life. And what's more, it's actually an alien civilization. And we're so excited to observe their habits, their communities, their relationships, only to soon realize that these beings, no matter what they do in their waking hours, they seem to stare at a piece of glass on their hands. They're looking at screens. So this is how we humans would appear if someone was observing us from outer space. Technology, connectivity, and the time we spend online increasingly dominate our lives. And don't get me wrong, our digital devices have significantly enhanced our daily activities. But if we cannot put limits on how we're using them, they can also disrupt our capacity to live fully. Today, I would like to focus on 3 aspects that I believe are important for our quality of life, but I believe are significantly affected by the time we spend online, our screen time. These are our capacity to be present in our experiences, in our lives, our sense of self and our worthiness, our perception of ourselves, and finally, our need to connect with others, how we form meaningful relationships. These issues became very important to me when I watched them deteriorate on my personal life a few years ago. It was during summer that I realized that my relationship with technology was becoming toxic. I was glued to my screen, mindlessly scrolling, and spending my time in a non-meaningful or enjoyable way. So I felt that I had to do something about it. So as a scientist, I decided to perform a small experiment on myself, and I deactivated all my social media accounts. Up until then, I was very active on social media, and I would frequently post and share stuff online. And if you ask me, maybe a little more than I should have. So I didn't think that this break would last for more than 2 or 3 days. During that break, that thankfully lasts until today, I found myself having so much more available time for myself. And I also acquired mental clarity. I started working out systematically. I started reading more books online and offline, and I started practicing mindfulness meditation. I didn't renounce technology. I'm still a geek at heart. I just wanted to explore more beneficial and meaningful ways of interacting with it. So what I've learned is this. The time we spend online, our relationship with our digital devices, significantly affects our moods, how we connect with each other, and ultimately, the overall satisfaction that we get from our lives. And this is important to realize. So the first issue that I would like to elaborate is our capacity to be present and engaged with our feelings, with our activities, and with our thoughts as they take place. Engagement is what makes us feel alive. It's the act of being present in our own lives. But during the last 15 years, mainly with the advancement of smartphones, it's almost impossible to have any kind of human experience without the presence of a digital device. These devices can constantly open a virtual world tailored to our personal needs and deepest desires. Our homes, our workplaces, our everyday activities, and even our wrists are now equipped with screens, ready to distract us with notifications from the here and now. And what is important is that the mere presence of these devices, even when we're not actively using them, can disrupt whatever experience we find meaningful. They can disrupt our flow of experience. And let me share an example with you. According to a study published in the Educational Psychology Journal, students perform less good, they perform worse in the end-of-term exams when during lectures, during the semester, they are allowed access to their smartphones or tablets for non-academic purposes. This makes sense, right? Students are distracted by their smartphones during lectures, so they don't perform well in the exams. But what is important is that this study also found that the students who are present in these lectures but do not use the devices themselves also perform worse, suggesting that the group learning experience is affected in a negative way. Essentially, what this means is that whatever experience we're having, even if we are not the active users of these devices, can be disrupted only without being present. So think about a time when you were focused on an activity, whether it was a meaningful conversation with a friend or a hobby that you enjoy, and that experience was interrupted by a phone call or a notification. I think this happens so frequently in our daily lives, so often, that these distractions are now ingrained in our lives. We take them for granted, but we shouldn't have. This shouldn't be the new normal. Because what we're doing is essentially we're losing our capacity to be present, our ability to focus, our ability to be engaged, to feel solitude, even to feel boredom. It is proven that when you feel bored, it's the birthplace of creativity and new ideas. We're losing these capabilities in order to be always connected and always available. And this affects something even more important and central within ourselves. It affects how we perceive ourselves and how we value ourselves. You see, our brain constantly creates narratives in order to make sense of the world and our present experiences. Even right now, we're telling stories inside our heads to make sense of who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. We craft stories to make sense of ourselves and our values. Essentially, the meaning that we get from our lives, the joy we get from our lives, depend directly on how our mind filters and interprets our everyday experiences. So since we spend more and more time online, since we spend more and more time on social media, we become constantly aware of the airbrushed moments of other people. And we make comparisons. We update our self-stories. What makes this constant assessing and comparing so self-defeating is that we're comparing our lives as a whole that we know of with carefully curated, selected moments of perfection or success of those we follow. When we expose ourselves to a digital ocean of perfect others, it can significantly reduce our ability to appreciate, to enjoy, and to feel grateful for the only thing that is truly our own unedited, authentic, and sometimes messy lives. What's interesting is that increasingly, online our self-value is defined by numbers. Number of views, number of likes, number of subscribers, and for all the researchers out there, number of citations. What makes these numbers so hard is that they end up dictating how we feel and how we perceive about ourselves. Why? Because these numbers function as imaginary performance indicators that we feel that we need to live up to. So when we don't get the views, the likes that we want, the attention that we crave online, this can subconsciously trigger one of our greatest fears, that we're not good enough, that we're not worth it. If you think that you're unaffected by such exposure, keep in mind that by design, our sense of happiness and achievement is based on how we compare ourselves to others. This is how our brains work. Only now, the others, instead of our friends, our peers, our community, are a vast sea of online accounts. And what is important, and I would really like your attention here, is that the repeated focus of our attention shapes our sense of self and our sense of worthiness. And let me repeat that. Where we repeatedly focus our attention, not only influences, but shapes who we think we are and how we value ourselves. All this makes the online content that we expose ourselves to extremely important. It directly determines and influences the internal content of our thoughts and feelings. So I think it's important to stress that we shouldn't rely on social media to set our standards for what constitutes a happy and meaningful life. We should start approaching our lives from a place of worthiness. We should take a good look in the mirror and realize that we're worth it, that we are good enough. And if it may help, we should take breaks sometimes from these unending streams of internalized perfection that are designed to tap into our deepest fears and insecurities. Instead of pretending online that we're living some great story, we should identify and satisfy our own deepest physical and emotional needs. We should find purpose in ourselves and meaning with our communities. And this can happen only when we form meaningful connections with those around us. But these days, we're mostly connecting online, but physically, we are alone, we are isolated. The comedian Mark Maron wrote that essentially every status update that we post is a variation on a single request. Will someone please acknowledge me? Will someone please acknowledge that I exist? But getting the attention online that we have learned to consider desirable, it's not the same as getting the meaningful connections that we really need. Dr. Brené Brown provides a compelling definition for connection. Connection is the energy that is created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. We are hardwired to connect with other people. This is what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. And without it, there is loneliness and suffering. And yes, technology facilitates connectivity, and it has helped us stay in touch, especially during the last pandemic. But when we cannot put limits to our tendency of being constantly available and constantly online, then meaningful connection can be severely compromised. Recently, I went for a drink with a friend, and I watched as he frequently disengaged from our conversation, checking his 2 smartphones without being prompted by a notification or a phone call. And this has become almost automatic in us. When we feel uncomfortable, the moment we feel bored, we reach for our devices to distract ourselves. And at least we should all be aware of that. I'm certainly guilty of doing that. But it is very challenging to connect with someone in a meaningful way when there is constant attention shifting, when we shift our attention between online and offline. So when there is constant attention shifting, there is no dedicated presence and no reliable connection. We don't feel seen by the other person. We don't feel truly connected. The author and journalist Johann Hari wrote that if you can be everywhere, you end up being nowhere. And I think also applies in this context as well. If we find ourselves spending our lives in a pendulum, in an ecremes, between online and offline, then we risk finding ourselves in a void of disconnection and loneliness. We truly end up being nowhere. So the connection we should seek is face-to-face, because most of our senses are engaged in that way. We should spend quality time with those physically close to us. We should find our offline tribe, whether it is our friends, our family, colleagues, or someone we share common interests with, and we should cultivate these bonds. Online connectivity cannot substitute the benefits of community and human connection. Given the impact that time online has on our capacity to be present, to value ourselves, and to be engaged, I think it's important to introduce a new concept, digital mindfulness, which should be appearing on your screen. I believe that using our time online mindfully can enable us to make technology serve our needs and not the other way around. Mindfulness means focusing and maintaining attention on an experience as it takes place. Orientation in the present is very important to achieve a positive quality of life. We should realize that time is our most precious commodity. Fulfillment comes from time that is felt and lived, not spent online. It comes from our ability to be present, moment by moment, in everything we do. So, as we gear up with technological equipment that is designed to distract us, practicing mindfulness can be a useful skill to reconnect with ourselves in the present moment. As I mentioned, I started practicing mindfulness meditation a few years ago, and I haven't stopped since. It helps me to acquire mental clarity, reduces my anxiety, and helps me to be more conscious with my relationship with digital devices. These days, there are smartphone applications where meditation experts are literally in the palm of our hands, and we should take advantage of that. Digital mindfulness means that every time that you're interacting, that you're reaching for your phone, it's good to set a clear intention and time frame. For example, I will play this game, but only for the next half an hour. I will check my emails for the next 10 minutes. Setting a clear intention helps us redefine why we're using the device, and the time frame even more. I do not succeed in always using my smartphone mindfully, and I'm still a work in progress, but it helps because it makes a very clear distinction. Am I using my device to perform a specific task, Or am I using it to distract myself, to forget myself? And I think this is an important distinction that we should all start making in our interactions with our digital devices. I won't lie to you. Being mindful isn't easy, and it requires a lot of practice. But it's the only way to experience life with clarity and purpose. As the author Ryan Holiday states, living clearly and presently takes courage. There is no one to perform for. There are only moments to be cherished and lessons to be learned in all that is around us. So the new paradigm regarding our relationship with technology can be something like this. Spend mindful time online for meaningful time offline. Online connectivity shouldn't be a barrier, but an enabler in our engagement with real-life experiences. Here's another advice. Locate the resource online, a book, an activity, a group, a community that you wouldn't otherwise know about or have access to, but bring the experience to the real world. Digital devices can enable us to create a better story for our lives. And we should strive to be present in this story, engaged, happy, connected. This is the most important story we craft. This is the story of our real life, and we should make the most of it. Thank you very much.